Hi, it's Sue Greenwald here with Awakened Stories. I'm here today with Deanna Carr with the Mystical Moonlight. Hey, Deanna, how are you?
I'm doing great today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Today's surprise topic for Deanna is the attack on Pearl Harbor. So, what I want to do is go over kind of my understanding of what the story is, what we've all grown up with, and then talk about what the truth really is of that.
Mhm.
So, my understanding is December 7th, 1941. There was a unprovoked surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, which killed so many of our guys. It's crazy. So what happened is the Japanese sent suicide bombers to Pearl Harbor, where we had a large naval base. And at that point, Hawaii was not a state of the US. They were just a territory, which we
Mhm.
were slowly encroaching on, but that's another video. And they came and they bombed away all of our planes. They sank several aircraft carriers, and many of our men died. So, probably about 2,400 or so men died. And then there were something like 1,200 or 1,400 seriously injured. All right. And that attack led to the US being lawfully declare war on the Japanese. I'm sorry, I'm spazzy today. They were allowed to declare war on Japan, and we the U.S. entered World War II. Okay, but later on, the U.S. was allowed or decided to drop two bombs in Japan, killing hundreds of thousands. So that one bomb dropping in Pearl Harbor led to so many dying in World War II, and then the bombing in Pearl Harbor. Okay, kind of the overview, not smoothly said, of what happened. Now, at that time, the president was FDR, and Japan declared war on the US and then later Britain, and we all had sides, and there was a lot of ugliness. But I wanted to talk about that point in history and how it affected so many and what the truth really was.
Mhm.
All right. Sorry, I'm not smooth here, but
Yeah, good.
doing too many things at once. So,
It's okay.
question. Did the Japanese really decide to bomb Pearl Harbor and plan that in secret, or was that something the US actually planned and carried out?
So that was actually planned. So this is where the initial attack is actually confused. Okay, so a lot of people think that the Japanese just came in and just boom, let's start war.
Yeah.
Um, the US was actually doing stuff that they weren't supposed to be doing beforehand.
Well, there's a
So
shock.
the attack was actually a provoked one. We just don't know about it per se.
Okay.
Um, so that initial attack was provoked. Okay.
Okay.
That is when they came over and they did have some, let's say, people working with the Japanese, let's say, government, talking about what their next plans were. So we did have some leaks happening at the time. So there was a little bit of information on our side of their next steps. So they did have recognition of what was going to happen. So
Okay.
it wasn't like it was completely blindsided. They did know what the next steps were going to be. Um, they also say that, the bombing on Pearl Harbor was a way for Japan to prevent us from starting war because they wanted to start taking over, I think it was China or something.
Yeah. Japan and China were kind of like sparring behind the scenes before all this happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they were, I mean, there's been issues, I mean, throughout history, there's always issues that have led to war.
Yeah.
Um, but they wanted to move forward, so they wanted, to do it without anybody interfering. Um, the US was going to interfere. That's where they, decided to come forward. So there's a mix of what was going on, but for the most part, it was not a unprovoked attack.
Okay,
let's say that.
so what you're saying, summary version, is the US kind of poked Japan by doing something nasty to them,
Mhm,
provoking
exactly.
them enough that they flew their guys over to bomb, to sink the, USS Arizona, to kill 2,400 of our guys, to bomb
Mhm.
away the harbor, all in all of, our airplanes and our ships and all of our stuff. So what
Yeah.
did US do?
So, okay, so some of that is classified information. But what they did was they went into Japan without, authority, because they do have to have certain, you know, rights to go
Right,
in and go
right.
snooping. So they were doing snooping that they weren't supposed to do. And they did find stuff and we're going to use it against them. Um, Usually it has to do with technology. So when they went over, they got caught, and Japan started to, come back after them.
Okay. So are you saying they had a couple of spies, or was it a bigger deal than that?
It was a bigger deal. It wasn't just a few people. It was how many people? So I'm seeing three different teams of 30 plus going into different locations.
Okay. And were they looking for like weapon technology, um, that kind of stuff?
Weapon technology mostly, but they're
Right.
also looking for information. We're just talking about, the bomb led into this, right?
Mhm.
They're looking for technology and advanced, you know, weaponry, let's call it that, um, for their own use. So Japan was actually leading. I mean, we already know US doesn't really come up with their own stuff. They take from others, correct? So they wanted what they had. The best way to do that was to go in slyly. Not everybody knows that because they led into a whole war. So why not just say, hey, people, this was an unprovoked attack. Now let's go get them, because now everybody's riled up. Oh my gosh, how could they hurt us without us doing anything? But they've always done this. They've always put in
Right,
people in to get information, to get stuff that they desire,
right,
and it causes many to die for no reason
right,
because they're seen as these little playing pieces versus human beings.
right. And according to like the treaties and the laws and all that, like we couldn't just, hey, I think I'll enter the war. We couldn't just decide
Yeah.
that. We had to have a darn good reason, and that attack on Pearl Harbor led them to that reason. So we already have lost 2,400 plus people. Now that's only what
Mhm.
they've reported, of course. All
Yeah.
right. And a lot of equipment and money and blah, 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 blah. But now going into the war, we're going to lose a lot more people. They're going to lose more people. And then that leads to the bombing and all sorts of nasty stuff. So it leads to a lot of pain and suffering, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yes.
And the other part where you asked where um if the US was behind it for the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and said it was kind of like mixed. Um, and I told you there was like a leak on the other side. Like they have cahoots on both sides. So what our side did was they put a little bug in their ear saying, hey, why not attack like this? So they basically, that's where it's kind of like that mixed what happens. They put a bug on their side saying, this is how we should go about it. So it was pretty much our plan, but they thought it was their plan.
Okay. I get it.
So
Yeah,
does that make sense?
yeah.
Like I said, it's kind of confusing because there's a lot that goes on. Um, and st oh my gosh, I can't say the word. Strategic. Oh my gosh, it's not
Egypt.
right.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
yeah, yeah. So why is it that the powers that be want us in wars? Like, what is the overall big picture there?
Okay, so many years ago, Andrew said something about um them being for blood sacrifice. And I was like, I wasn't that far into, these conspiracy theories, that kind of thing. Like I knew most of it, but like I didn't really have the understanding and the the deep connection with my intuitiveness. And he says, and I'm like, no, it's not that. And later on, as I'm growing and changing, I understand part of it is for the blood sacrifice. Okay. And it's a very hard concept because we think of blood sacrifice as in just, witches and I want to find information. Here's blood, and you receive whatever you're looking for. But if they do a blood sacrifice on a large scale, it's not only bringing in some sort of ritual, it's bringing in a whole new energy system. Okay. So just think about this. I mean, how many wars have been in the last decade itself? How many people have lost their lives in the last decade? And as each year progresses, it seems like it's more and more.
Yeah.
And it's not even just war based anymore. Now it's becoming, community based. We are hurting ourselves. I saw this video the other day. It was, what is the most vicious creature killing off humans? And it went through sharks. It was actually the smallest amount, but we're afraid of sharks. But when we get to the top number, it's actually humans.
Right. Right.
Humans are killing off humans. Isn't that interesting? So it's programming too. It's programming us to not trust each other, to be accepting of killing each other. And later on, they're setting it up so we're going to be okay with more because we're already okay with all this dark, negative energy. They're just setting up for even darker situations.
Right. Right. Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. So you said it in a different way than I would have, but it's beautifully said because the powers that be relish the pain and suffering of our
Mhm.
people. They
Yeah.
they thrive on that energy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And of course, then there's the financial aspect. So all of these guys that run these big companies, corporations, they are, obviously they retrofit their factories or whatever their operation
Mhm.
is to house, clothe, send stuff for the soldiers, this and that, weapons. There's a lot of money to be made, especially if you're selling it to the government, right? You can
Mhm.
overcharge. It's a lot of money laundering,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of money to be made, you know,
Mhm.
and they don't really care about the average person at all, which is super
Mhm.
sad, isn't it?
It is because these people, they're doing it for a reason.
Yeah,
Whatever their reasoning, that they think that they're helping their country, they need to
right,
support their family. There are some people that they do like more of physical fighting, so they do it for that purpose, but everybody has a reason they're doing this.
right, right.
And that's where the government is able to really pull people in, especially during that time. There now we're getting a little smarter. Like, okay, we've seen this, you kind of played the same thing over and over. Oh, we're good. We want to stay alive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but there's a point where people, they felt like what they were doing was for the right purpose.
They were
And
patriotic. People
yeah,
cared about their country. They thought whatever the government said, that was the truth, and they
mhm,
wanted to help. And so the men would jump to enlist, all the young men, right?
mhm,
And it was an honor to do that. And a lot of them didn't make it, right? And
yeah,
even think of it this way, the war was fought over in Europe. And look at the suffering the Europeans went through. If their country was invaded, there was no water, food, shelter, there was a lot of
mhm,
death and hardship. And then, of course, we hear about the concentration camps. Like, how horrible of a life would that be? Now,
mhm,
we were lucky enough not to have the battle here on our soil, but we lost so many.
mhm,
Just think of what they lost over there, just because of, that they feed off that energy, that negative dark energy, and then the economic gain derived from war. So
yeah,
yeah, I think we got that. So the other benefit for, we'll call them the bad guys, is this is one of the events. I mean, there's so many that we've talked about that have shaped opinions. It's basically
Mhm.
propaganda, like, oh, we've got to go to war, like we're the best country on earth, and we've got to
Mhm.
support democracy and free speech and all of these things, and we're brainwashed to think that we're supporting freedom,
Yeah.
right?
Well, my thing is, why do we keep going off and, thinking that we are the best country when we have so many internal issues?
Yeah,
And that's also part of it. Like you said, that like, okay, we're gonna go help them. We're the big and bad America.
yeah,
We're just bad.
yeah,
And that's the problem that most of us don't see is, you know, it's hard to understand that we weren't built on a good system. We might have had a good idea. I mean,
right,
probably how we were set up wasn't even, how we were taught. But
yeah,
we're set up on this negative basis to kind of take from others.
right,
And anybody that stands up to us, we push out the way.
right,
And that's kind of, how all these wars happen is, okay, we're gonna push them out the way, we're gonna get what we need. Like I said, for this bombing too, they dropped the two bombs, right? Those were testers.
yeah,
They're trying to make, well, they already have, but they were trying to make bigger pieces of this weaponry and technology so that way they could take out more.
right,
And it kind of goes back into when we talk about world killers, right? Just think these bombs were dropped and people were gone. Mass amount of people in less than a second,
right,
right?
right.
And so if they can develop it further, they were going to.
Yeah, I know what happened is they developed the bomb. They
Mhm.
were itching to drop it on somebody to test it out, like you said. That's exactly what happened. So they dropped it on, I have the numbers here. So in 1945, I think it was August, they dropped two bombs in Japan. Hiroshima lost 140,000 people from that one bomb, plus all the other effects,
Mhm.
the sickness and
Radiation.
the property damage and the land and blah, 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 blah. Okay, Nagasaki, 74,000,
Mhm.
plus what we lost in the war, plus what we lost in Pearl Harbor. Can you
Yeah.
even imagine those numbers? That's insane. And that's just what's reported. So we don't
Yeah.
really know if those are true numbers.
Yeah. There's probably a lot more. The other thing that aren't in their reports is why they dropped them there. Okay. Remember when I just said they had three teams of at least 30 people going in to
Yeah,
find technology for two different purposes? That's probably where they found it, right? You got to connect the dots. So,
yeah,
how can you take out a system that has already been testing out weaponry and, all that stuff for protection, whatever they're going to use it for? They've already been developing systems. How can you wipe it out quickly, easily, and so nobody can look at it?
wow,
Nobody's going to have access to it. If you bomb them, it's going to look like it's part of the war versus, hey, we went in, we did something we weren't supposed to. It's not us, it's them.
right,
So
right.
there's multiple purposes to why they dropped those two.
Yeah, they do the same thing now, but good point. So they dropped it strategically on those areas to cover up or to destroy the labs, the technology, the whatever
Hmm.
that was there, you know, crazy.
Yeah.
And so two or three other points I wanted to make about this event is Japan went through a lot of suffering. And so when I was a kid, the Japanese stuff that you would buy was what we'd call junk. It never worked. It was cheaply made. Nobody wanted anything from Japan. Well, they didn't like Japanese at all because of the war, but the stuff that was produced there was very low quality. And then Japan finally got its act together, and now like the cars are made there, all the a lot of electronics are made there, and it's very good quality.
Yeah.
So yeah, we tried to like destroy that country.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I wanted to talk about is we then put Japanese citizens here in America in internment camps, right? concentration camps while the war was going on. So that was like, let's just round them up and throw them there and take their stuff, which is what we basically did.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, I
So it's
believe,
kind of like, hey, how can we write this? How can we make people feel safe? And it's really, it was taking away their rights. It was making those people feel insignificant, especially what did they have to do? Like, there is no reason to even connect them.
yeah,
And I've heard stories about what families went through, and it's just, horrific of, especially people thinking that's okay.
yeah,
And that's really, I think, what it is part of it is how do we make people okay with doing these nasty things to other humans?
yeah.
And if you're okay with that, then what else can we get away with?
Yeah. So like I said, these events shape our opinions. Okay, so you see a Japanese person in America, you're automatically they're the enemy, even though they might have grown up here. So not fair, so not right,
Yeah.
crazy. Um, so any other things that they did that we're not aware of from the party story, the story that we're all told? And I know this story is 80 plus years old. Okay, so, but what I've been trying to do with some of our little videos is show how the truth has been covered up consistently. And
Mhm.
of course, we're innocent. We don't know any better. We weren't even born then. But we were taught this, in our schools,
Mhm.
and we just assume it's correct. We have no other choice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because you're taught it, you have to memorize it, you have to write papers on it, you have to take tests on it.
yeah,
So they have ways to make people think this is what happens.
yeah,
And everybody, everybody has their right to believe whatever they want at the end of the day.
yeah,
If they really think that that is what happened, that is their choice. Um, but once you start digging, it does get messy. And that's, I think, the other thing is it's hard to realize that all this stuff that we've been taught is wrong. We've been taught the wrong things,
right.
and then we're actually not part of the good side.
Yeah,
And I think that's, we want to believe that we are good people.
yeah,
Just because you're a good person doesn't mean you live in a under a good government.
right.
I mean, government really isn't good in general. So why always take their information 100% at heart? And
Yeah,
that's where, people have to understand that they have to use discernment to understand what reality is versus what they've been told.
right, right. And again, it was probably another way to cut down on the population as well, having these wars, right?
Yeah.
Because they're always trying to reduce our population.
Mhm.
And, there's always different ways they go about it. Right now, they're doing it through climate change. Like there's too many people, there's not enough food on earth. They're causing the shortages, but they're telling us it's us causing the problem,
Yeah.
right? So.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else we should know about this unprovoked, horrible attack by the Japanese? And it was horrible. I'm not downplaying what happened. I'm not saying it was the right thing or easy. What I'm saying is we were taught the wrong reasons why it was done, and the
Mhm.
reasons were horrific, and the result of those actions was horrific.
Yeah, because and people that weren't a part of it got hurt.
Yeah,
Um, I don't think there's anything else coming forward. So if people have questions or, people want more information, just let me know. I try to give you as much as I can,
yeah,
but if there's always
yeah.
questions, always ask.
Yeah, I thank you so much for your time and, again, comments and questions are always welcome. Thank you so much, Deanna.
Yep, bye.
Bye-bye.